You do it. Amazing. So we're live.
Ta-da! Welcome, Colin. Let's jump into the small talk. Robert was just commenting about how in person you are a much larger human, and you were telling us you run into stuff too. And I get that as an ADHD girl because I have poor spatial awareness, and I am always anticipating that I'm going to fall. So you were in Washington, D.C. You're just about to share with us.
Yeah, well, I'm meeting some people for the first time, or seeing people that I've worked with, for years, and I can count on one hand the number of times we've been in person together, and it's almost like it feels like it's a different conversation when you're in person with somebody. It's like I lose the same sort of like cadence of what we usually talk about and what we usually do,
Yeah.
because we've got a cocktail in our hand and we're looking down Pennsylvania Avenue at this silly wrestling ring that's being built in the White House lawn.
I always find it fun when you have been having a professional relationship with somebody for a long time, and then you finally meet in person and you're like, do we handshake? Do we hug? I'm like, I'm a hugger. I hug people. I don't know. We've never had this encounter, but we know so much from each other and we've been friends for so long.
Yeah, I do still find, and I'm very curious, Tanya, how you feel about this, the male and female dynamics of it too, right? Is I do feel like, and I was an elementary school teacher where I was the only male in many meetings. Often it was early childhood, and everybody hugs. So I'm very conditioned to hug. But there are meeting men for the first time. There are a lot of men who don't want to hug. And I'm sure there are women who also don't want to hug. But I don't feel like the social norm gives them that option all the time. Is that fair?
Yeah. And also, I think post-COVID, I think we're all much more in tune to be at least in my perception, to want that human connection. And maybe because so many people I interact with were remote. And so I think we just get excited in a post-COVID world. Yeah. And just my nature of who I consider a professional friendship, we have the same vibe. So when I meet them in person, it just clicks. It's not awkward. But I definitely have had moments with some people where I don't want to hug them, and I make it very clear I don't want to hug them. So it's normally not a problem for me.
All right. Well, that's good, because anybody who's going to listen to this or watch this, if we ever meet in person and you're not sure, I'll take a hug. Also take a handshake.
Same.
I'm a big high fiver. I think a lot of people have gotten over the high five. It was always easy with kids, right? You just put your hand up and it's like an automatic reaction for kids. Adults, if you put your hand up, not a lot of them know what you're doing.
What is that?
I'm just waiting for the high five. Just hit me with it.
Okay, so now we know you can hug or high five, and you can always go for a handshake. So this will be fun next time we're all at a conference together. Nev, are you going to Badge Summit?
I'm going to Badge Summit. Are you both going there?
Yeah. Robert's talking. I'm talking. Are you on talking?
We're talking. Trying not to. Trying to stay on the side. But, Noah likes to pull people in.
All right. So either high five or hug or handshake us at Badge Summit, and we'll see you guys all there. Colin, we're going to jump into your article here. And I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. I'm new at being producer of the show, everyone. So give me a moment. Oh, look at me go. Seamless. So Colin wrote an awesome article for Skills Scoop about the wrong ROI questions that are being asked and what it's costing learners and institutions. And Robert dabbled a little bit on this on the last one and gave some opinions here, but we wanted to give Robert the microphone and kind of jump into it. Robert, do you want me to leave this on screen, or do we want to just kind of jump into it and ask questions overall?
Well, I think they saw it, so we can remove it from the screen, and it'll just be a head-to-head between Colin and I. And we're just going to do a quick interview here. I'm going to ask Colin a couple follow-up questions. This does leverage the previous edition that we did. So if you are interested in my take, feel free to listen to the previous issue. And if you have strong feelings or any feelings about hug versus handshake versus high five, I invite you to add that to the comments, either on YouTube or LinkedIn where this is published. So that's me being a good host. Now I'm going to switch hats to interviewer. So Colin, first off, why don't you introduce yourself for folks who might not be familiar with your work or haven't had a chance to look at the article yet?
Yeah, Colin Reynolds. I should have put my last name on the bubble. I put learning curator because that is how I kind of got into this space. I was a classroom teacher and administrator for the first 15 years of my career, and I was always kind of consulting on the side around ed tech, and I was like a digital coach in my school district for a while. I was a technology administrator for a little while, but learning curator is kind of what has pulled it all together. I currently hold a position as a senior director of strategy and impact with Education Design Lab, and I have worked with a number of different organizations. And so, like, I feel like we're past the Twitter days of like when we had to put on our profile like the views are my own and not a reflection of my employer. So coming into this conversation, I also want to make that clear. It's like I do work with Education Design Lab. I also work with a number of other organizations around the education, technology, workforce, policy, pipeline arena. So that's where I spend a lot of my time, is in different conversations around that, increasingly at the intersections of all that work. And so a couple of years ago, when Web3 and blockchain was like all the rage, was deep in the throes of those conversations because of the intersections they have. And Robert, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about all these things. And you're somebody that I definitely consider a thought partner and really a leader in this space as well. So yeah, I'm glad that we've met and worked together over the years. Maybe not as much as either of us would like to work together, but we're finding ways.
Yeah, that's right. And I always appreciate your background, and I love it when you're able to call that out, because there aren't as many former educators as they used to be at the kind of rarefied upper echelons of this nonlinear problem that includes everything, that you mentioned before. It's how it manifests into, what challenges, what problems we can solve with the technology instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
And I always really appreciate your perspective on that. And you're able to provide that perspective, I think, a very valuable perspective in terms of the ROI question, which seems to suck up a lot of the air in the room. And I love that you redirected. So I'm just going to go ahead, for the sake of time, just jump into the first question. And, you open the article by saying that when institutions hear learning mobility, the first question is often, what does this cost us? Why is that the wrong first question, Colin?
I think it mostly centers on this like client service mindset around education in general. And I get it. Like I, sat on tons of curriculum review committees, was part of the administration teams reviewing, budgets annually and making big decisions about, hey, if we do this thing, this is the per pupil cost, or this is the per faculty cost, or this is, like there are costs to doing everything. And so I think that's what one of the mindsets that educators and employers actually bring to this equation. And so I tried to kind of take some of that employer language that we hear around ROI and position it in a way that I hear it and sort of experience it in our conversations with higher education institutions. And so I think that's right off the bat why I say this isn't about the cost, right? We'll get to the cost, and every institution has to get to the cost of things. But learning mobility should really center on the learners that your institution is serving and ways that you can better support the experience the experience they have coming into your institution and eventually leaving your institution, because that is a reality for every single learner every institution serves. There's an entry point and there's an exit point.
That's a really excellent transition. And I think that your framing around not just what happens in the classroom, but what happened before the learner entered the classroom and what happened after, that learner entered the classroom. And I think that there's an increasing emphasis on that before and after. And that's a really smart way to frame it. In your article, you argue that the better ROI question, so instead of asking, what does this cost us, the better ROI question is not what an individual institution loses when a learner moves faster, right? So they're not capturing as much of that, value that they're used to framing it as, but what the system gains when more people complete with credentials that are legible, portable, connected to opportunities after. What really changes, like tangibly? when we shift from institutional ROI to thinking more of that system level?
Yeah, there's the some college no credential population is where a number of our like institutional partners have directed this to say we may have stop outs. Everybody has stop outs. How many stop outs do we actually have collectively, and how are we able to onboard those learners to finish something, right? I think that's one way to think about it, is like you are enabling folks to take their credentials and go somewhere else. You're also enabling the somewhere else to be you. And
Right.
I think that is that's a part of the equation that in some of the states we're working in, the number of institutions an individual learner attends after high school, like in their post-secondary experience, is not one or two. In many cases, it's 3, 4, 5, and in some cases, it's when reverse transfer is involved, you've got students that are going between institutions multiple times just to complete a course program or to get one more class that they need for a job that they know they want, or a job that they're currently in, or something that they think might help them get further down the path. And so I think when you change the mindset away from what we're losing and you start to focus more on what's coming to our door and how can we better serve learners that may be the one that left our institution, it really helps to think more holistically about the experiences that learners bring to your institution, and how you can help them level up.
Yeah, that's right. So that's really interesting. What are stop outs, by the way, just in case there are some folks listening who might not know what that means?
Yeah, it's anybody who starts at a school and leaves without completing a program, or without completing a specific degree, or earning a certification or a credential. So in some cases, they stop in the middle of a course, in the middle of a semester or quarter. In other cases, they may get 2/3 of the way there and they actually get a job, and they don't think they need to complete that program or complete that course because they got a job in the thing that they wanted. Or maybe it's just another thing that was a better opportunity for them and they took it. And so they stopped somewhere along the journey without getting a credential or any type of like degree completion. So somebody who has an unofficial transcript without an attached credential.
That's okay. I love you mentioning that. And the allied health example that you mentioned in your article, it really stood out to me. So the community college redesigned the program around these stackable micro-credentials that employers valued the skills, but the learning mostly disappeared when students tried to transfer. So it was one of those situations where maybe they started in one place, and then when they moved to another part of the program, those two parts of the system didn't necessarily communicate. So you write that the program was working, but the infrastructure around it wasn't. What did that example reveal to you as an SME, as a practitioner in the space?
The way that we're assessing learning outcomes and the way that we are transcripting or reporting them are different. And then the way that employers, in many cases, are talking about evaluating talent is another sort of measuring stick. And so all these different measuring sticks, I'll just stick with that metaphor. All these different measuring sticks are creating not so much a moving target, but they're not even using the right measuring stick to measure what a learner has accomplished, because they're coming from their own frame of reference. So if I'm an employer and I say these are the skills that matter to me, I'm going to be looking for those skills in whatever evidence you can bring to me. And if I, as a learner, have been understanding my completion to be in credits and learning objectives, I may not be articulating the skills that I acquired to that opportunity, or to the employer. And so we're measuring it differently. And I think that's been the part of the challenge of the infrastructure that's supporting it, is like, we're in this really interesting space where AI can translate a lot. But we need to be able to tell it what we want it to translate to in order for that to be effective. And I don't think that we really know that. And the infrastructure around it is not built that way. We're operating with legacy systems, and these are unintended barriers and unintended consequences for learners. That this wasn't the objective 20 or 30 years ago, or even 5 years ago when some of these systems were built. It's just a reality of our shifting world.
Yeah. Just to put a fine point on it, was that a transcript problem, a transfer problem, a governance problem, or all of the above?
It's all of the above. I think the starting at the institution level, so Education Design Lab, we help to build micro pathway programs at mostly community colleges, and many of these programs are non-degree, non-credit programs that are employer validated and lead to the skills and credentials that learner needs to have to fulfill a job role that an employer knows that they've identified. Many of these are in high need, high demand professions, like in healthcare. A lot of vocational and trades programs are becoming high need again, like HVAC, electricians, that kind of stuff. And so when you've got a program that you've developed, and many of these programs, they're quite innovative in terms of higher education and how schools are providing learning opportunities and training opportunities. But when you built something new, you often need a new way of reporting the outcomes and translating those outcomes to learners and to employers. And so I think that to call it a transcript problem is it's just putting a label on something that we are all familiar with. And saying that that's actually not the best way for a non-degree, non-credit program to be reported and delivered to an individual.
Yeah. It also, it just brings me back to this idea that this is a nonlinear problem that we're solving for. It's not like if you do this, then this other thing is going to happen. It's really a matter of like inputs and outputs. And, one of the things that you pointed out in your article, which I really liked a lot, was that you asked the audience, you said, look, how many people are stuck right now because no one can see what they already know? That feels like the heart, really, for me, of the article. So what are those invisible skills? What are those learners? Who are they? And really, where are they getting stuck is the question. And depending on where, the moving parts start to change a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with that framing? I just liked it a lot.
Well, one of the projects that we're working in right now is in rural communities. So we have a project called Strengthening the Rural Workforce. And I think this really helps to highlight the challenges that these learners are experiencing and why they're feeling stuck. Is that we've been talking about on ramps and off ramps into programs, into learning engagements, and part of being able to have an on ramp is to know that you're moving in the right direction, and there's a different road that you need to get onto, right? And sometimes that road is there, but for anybody who's driven, I'm guessing, I was going to go stick with the rural community. I grew up in rural northern Minnesota, and there's not always an easy on-ramp to a major highway that we need to get to. And so you end up taking a lot of back roads or side roads that eventually will get you there, but that you need to get to that destination, and you're going to take whatever opportunity is in front of you to get there. And I think that's part of what makes people feel stuck, is that they know that there is an opportunity that exists, but they aren't always sure how to get there. Right. And even if they had a path to get there, they're not sure that they're equipped with what they need to go down that path to get there. So if I'm a learner who wants to start a career in healthcare, and I've never worked in healthcare, then I might come from the mindset that I have nothing in my personal experience or lived experiences that qualifies me to get into a healthcare program. So therefore, I'm just not even going to try. And I think that is that way of looking at it limits what your lived experience can translate to. And when we work with employers and higher education partners on building pathways, we talk about durable skills and technical skills. And the technical skills are context and industry specific. And so if you're thinking about a job in healthcare, there are some very specific healthcare skills that you need. But there's a whole set of durable skills like self-directedness and critical thinking and collaboration or being part of a team that many of us have experienced somewhere else, but don't always think about those skills as strong qualifiers for a program that we might be stepping into. And that's something we hear from employers constantly, is that we can train them in our industry. What we can't train them to do is show up on time, have a positive attitude, be a team player, ask when they need help. Like those types of durable skills are really, really valuable and help somebody feel like they might actually have the right skills or right qualifications to get unstuck if they think about it in those ways.
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to follow up real quick. So is the some college, no credential population the clearest proof that invisible learning is not necessarily a learner failure, but an infrastructure failure?
That's a good way to present it. I mean, when there is a huge some college no credential population across all the United States, I think the number that we actually talked about in a webinar yesterday around learning mobility was 36 million. So 36 million learners across all 50 states is a big population of folks, and some of them have stopped within the last 6 months. Some of those folks have stopped within the last 6-10 years. But that's an infrastructure failure when those learners are trying to get back into it and they just don't even know where to go to get all their evidence of learning to then bring to the front door of the next place they're trying to go.
Yeah, that's right. And I live in rural Maine right now, and I'll tell you for sure, if 36 million people were getting lost, it's probably not the driver. It's probably the road. It just, when you start thinking about it that way, I think it makes a lot of sense. And even something as sophisticated as Google Maps is accepting input from drivers on a continuous basis, because even if you know where the roads are, is there construction? Like, is there a slowdown? Is there a cop, right? Are you gonna get pulled over if you're going too fast? Like, we use this analogy a lot, but I think it holds up really well.
It does. Actually, somebody was using that this week in the conversations in DC. We were talking about the Google Maps example, and they actually said that they prefer Waze because Waze autocorrects. Google Maps does too, but Waze autocorrects in a way that felt more comfortable and familiar and helpful for them. And I thought that was really interesting because we use the GPS analogy often, but what doesn't come up in that conversation is that there are many different GPS tools, and Google Maps is the one that gets the most attention. There are so many different options for people to use when it comes to navigation in your vehicle. Learners don't have that luxury. People don't have that luxury in their professional navigation. They don't have somebody that's going to help them autocorrect if they miss a turn. In fact, they don't even know that they've missed a turn until they're so off course that they are stuck. So I think that's part of the challenge, and the framing of having different options is such a luxury for helping folks navigate and get back on track or get unstuck.
Man, that is Tanya, do you have any thoughts?
I'm just in the background going like, I'm shaking my head ferociously and playing with the cool little navigation pieces that we have here and trying to like grab as many little quotes and put on screen. But I love that GPS analogy. That's so powerful and like I think really hits home the like main idea of this.
Yeah, I appreciate this interface is kind of fun. Actually, this is StreamYard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great, and being able to pop up some of those interactives. I know that these podcasts are helpful. Some people are very good at listening without watching. I know some folks really enjoy seeing the faces and listening to the conversation as well. But this is actually, I'm just going to take it a step further too, to talk about the way that we visualize the learning opportunities for individuals. And not every learner has the opportunity to look at a map. Like, that's even the concept of a map, a paper-based map, which can be super simple, like that's not something that every learner gets when they think about their opportunities. And that's an infrastructure failure, right? It's like there are so many different experiences that people bring to the front door of an academic institution or to an employer's application portal, but the experience they have going through and filling out forms that's an infrastructure piece. We're all filling out the same forms with the same information that's being mapped in ways that we don't even know. And if we could see what the employer was looking for, if we could see what the academic institution was actually looking for and how they were actually mapping us, that would help us tremendously in the information we're putting into that portal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so this is a hangout. So I actually have to drop. I have to
say, Robert has
Yeah,
to leave, but Colin and I are
do.
going to pick up because one of the things I want to cover is an AI article that we wrote about making your resume more skills based. And I think it's interesting that you're talking about having like a
Hey,
map.
Robert.
Hi,
Good
guys.
seeing you.
I think it's interesting about having a map. And I just saw something that like now with AI, there's a assumption or they're estimating that hiring is going to be changing, not because AI makes it easier or whatever, but that people who are neurodivergent are going to be sought out more in an AI world because they have things that you can never recreate inside of an AI model, like creativity and out of the box thinking and pattern recognition and all this other stuff. And like, yeah, AI is really good at pattern recognition, but not when it comes to like human psychology, because humans evolve and change. And there's all these data points that you can't put into computation the way that neurodivergent people can pick up the micro change in your eyebrow when they say yes, but really they meant no. And, like all of these things. And I think it's really interesting that when we get into this map idea of education is like AI can help put so many things into place and technology can help, but ultimately it's up to us as humans to recognize these human needs. Like I need somebody to look at me and tell me, hey, you're entering college or you're entering school. Here are all the different options that you can take. Here are all the different pathways. I believe in you. You can take any of them. But if nobody gives you that map or gives you that confidence, then I think we end up in some of these pieces that you guys are so eloquently describing.
Yeah, I think we're moving past this. And I coach a college baseball team, a club team. And one of the biggest shifts that I noticed from even my early coaching days, so I played college baseball and coached a high school team for a few years. What's different is that I don't feel like I'm as much of the holder of information that I'm imparting as much as I feel like I'm actually collaborating directly with my players on what they're seeing and what I'm seeing. And I'm providing some video evidence. They're providing some video evidence. We're doing it together, and we're really coming to kind of a consensus for what feels best for them. And the only sort of not the only, one of the main sort of perspectives that I get to offer is that as much as they're focusing on them, they're part of a team. They're part of a bigger picture, and it's my job to help hold kind of that bigger picture and accountability to that person who's trying to be the best version of themselves for the team and for the shared outcomes. And that translates to me very clearly to what we're talking about here is that everybody who steps into a program, everybody who wants to go back to school or wants to get a job, somewhere deep down, they want that human connection and they want to be part of a team. If they didn't want to be a part of a team, they'd go work solo on their own and they'd figure it out in their own ways. And that there are plenty of people that can go and do that. That's not the norm. A lot of people who are applying to college, applying to a continuing ed program, value what they're going to learn and the people they're going to learn that from and with, but they want to be a part of the conversation and they want to be a part of the solution, and they don't just want to be told what to do to get to that end. And I know that's overgeneralizing, but I think that's a pretty true sentiment of a lot of the learners that we work with.
And I feel as what I describe as a newbie to this industry, that a lot of that just human basic, like, well, yeah, duh, that makes so much sense when we say it that way. But if you get in a room with people who are fixated on solving some of these problems, I think sometimes we just get like tunnel vision and we forget about the humans. Like,
yeah. I mean,
this is a mathematical equation here, guys. Like, we're talking about human people.
Well, and that's how I ended up with Education Design Lab. I mean, part of the reason that I'm there is that human-centered design is core to the way that we approach work with partners and the way that we approach work with learners and anybody really, is that we want to more deeply understand the problems that we're trying to solve, and we want to better understand the people that those decisions and problems are impacting. And we want them to be in the conversation and part of the solutioning, right? Because so often we design in isolation and then expect learners and expect other people to just go through what we have designed. And that is a really difficult thing to change.
Yeah.
And often people don't really always know what they want, right? So like the famous Henry Ford quote is, if you ask people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? And that is still very true. But I think to be able to be a part of a solution or part of an experience that you are going to share with somebody else and be part of having autonomy and agency inside of that is a really powerful thing. And there are ways that every institution and every employer and every community can create agency and create opportunity for active participation and co-design if they take a step back and think about it from that lens, right? A human-centered lens.
Yep. And in my work in marketing, that's the first question I ask. I'm like, well, who's your target audience? Like, who are you building this for? And most of the time people are like, either they say everyone, and I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Or they go, well, we were building this. I'm like, yeah, but for who?
Yeah.
Because the journey and the experience, if it's for a kindergartner who doesn't speak English, or it's for somebody who's got a master's degree and can do calculus, in their sleep, or like, those are two completely different programs and journeys and things. So yeah, starting with the human, I think, is one of the most important pieces, but adopting change and having change in your organization is a big thing.
Yeah. And it's okay to get narrow and to get specific. And I think there's often pushback about persona-based design or human-centered design in some of these conversations that we have, because it starts to really get specific, and that can feel overwhelming. And it's like, okay, well, if we're going to consider, this person, then don't we have to consider like every variant of that person? And the short answer is kind of like, yeah, you do. But the longer answer is there's a lot more in common across those individuals and their experiences if you give space for them to contribute and to start to map some of that. So I think, some of the work we've been doing with states in learning mobility starts with identifying a few core proto-personas or high-level profiles of the types of learners that they're serving. And it's all oriented around transitions. So like, who are the learners that have stopped out? Who are the learners that are going through a barrier, through a transition, like high school to college? Like every state has high school to college transitions. So it's helpful to in these conversations to even narrow in and say, look, we get 95% of our student population are high school graduates. Awesome. Then you should be focusing on high school graduates.
Yep.
And you can worry about the other 5% as a secondary, area, but 95% of your student population are coming from and going through this experience. So focus on that.
Yep.
And I think that's okay. And a lot of times our partners need to hear that, but they need the data to help them understand that is actually the core population and part of the core problem you're solving.
Yeah. And then what I see a lot of clients do is go, well, we don't want to miss out on something. And what I say is like, you want to attract the right people and detract the wrong people, right? Like if 95% of your high school students are coming from X demographic, like don't worry about the 3 people that don't fit that. That's okay. The 3 people are going to go to the things that attract them over there because your offering is this. And like your university or your organization has its own personality and its own brand, where you want to attract more of the people who are aligned with your values and your approach and your pathways, and you want to attract all of the people who are correct for that program, and it's like a good match, and you actually do want to detract all the people who aren't going to match that, because it's going to ruin your data. You're going to end up having, from just like marketing standpoints, like, oh, all these people landed on our page and we spent all this money on advertising and Facebook ads. And then you look and you're like, yeah, but none of them converted. And you just wasted all this money because you wanted to attract everybody. And in doing so, you got nobody who you actually wanted. And so now it's not successful, and you may have the most beautiful program and the most beautiful offering, but if the right people can't see it or be attracted to it, it ends up being a really poor investment, going back to your ROI, right? Like, it's so well interconnected. I wanted to chat really quickly about, how do I add to stage, about change, because how do you adopt change in your organization, especially in this world of LER, where most of the time what I've heard and seen is that it's under, your program doesn't have a lot of funding. And so people are wearing multiple hats, and a lot of people are being put in a position where they're launching an LER, or they're in charge of a new program. And then they're also in charge of getting their whole organization to adopt that change. So we were trying to have Lisa, who wrote this wonderful article for us. She's a change management expert. And I'm going to be doing a one-on-one interview with her on the 25th, which we will put out, and we get to ask her all of these great things on it. But we also wrote an article about AI prompts to help you build a more skills-based resume while still being authentic. So this is just some prompts that you can steal and use and adapt. But Colin, I just kind of wanted to ask you on your thoughts about AI, and particularly more around like skills-based resumes, and kind of what you've seen and maybe heard in the industry overall. I'm going to make you kind of close this out.
This is... that's a very large question to close it out. But it gets to the LER idea. And one of the conversations this week around LERs was that somebody said an LER is like the Loch Ness Monster, like something we always talk about, but like nobody's actually seen. And I think the LER, it's this larger umbrella idea of a learner being able to collect all of their achievements and put them into a presentation that they can understand, and that can go into an ATS or some application portal. And the data inside of that can be mapped towards whatever opportunity you're applying for. And so I think when we talk about AI, we talk about skills, it's really easy to have AI generate a whole bunch of skills-based stuff. But if you put crap in, you're going to get crap out. And the AI functions much more effectively if you feed it quality information, right? Like prompt engineering, just like you said, here's some prompts that people can use. You're making an attempt to try to structure the output by giving it a better input. And so this is where verified credentials and the data that can be put inside of a verified credential from an issuer becomes really powerful. Millions of applications are going to be submitted with AI. What percentage of those applications are going to be built off of verified data, validated skills data that has evidence to support the claim that they did the thing in the context that the employer is looking for? Mm-hmm. That is going to create a totally different connection and output for employers in the matching process. If we collectively are issuing digital credentials that have validated skills data inside of it, and give it to a learner to bring to that portal and help them understand what it actually represents about them.
Yeah, I have this theory that I actually think AI is good for the LER industry, because what it causes is a pain point that employers didn't know they had.
Yep.
Which is, oh, right, people can lie on their resume. Oh, right, now everybody looks good on paper, but you get them in the door, and if they know how to use AI well, but the skills aren't true, but they have a great, charming personality, and then you get them into the job, and you're like, wait, what? I got bait and switch. But now with the ability to have verified credentials, now you can verify that all things are true. Like, oh, they were able to use AI to put something together that is well polished and communicates what they do, but then it's also now verified that that's actually true, not that they just know how to utilize AI communication tools. And the person that you interview in terms of the durable skills and the soft skills and all of that can also be true. And so now you have a much more accurate description and interpretation of who that candidate actually is when you put him into the role. So I'm actually like, hey, you guys, this is just accelerating the problem that our employers are seeing. And now it's just on a grander scale, because now everyone's like, my ATS system, my applicant tracking system is like just filled with great candidates. But then you interview them and you're like, who is this? They can't formulate a sentence.
Right. And the job descriptions that employers draft, I mean, think about what they usually have. It's like, well, here are the requirements for this job. Here are these job responsibilities. Here's what success in this role looks like. They're not stating anything about the skills that would be required to meet these responsibilities, the skills that you would need to have to demonstrate success in this role, and skills that you might have that bring more to this role than we were actually looking for. And so that's a translation and an infrastructure failure in that conversation too. And I wholeheartedly agree that AI can actually function as a more valuable tool if verified credentials and validated skills data is a part of the equation. And
what excites me is like a future where you're at your current employer and they are now issuing micro credentials, or I forgot what the industry word is for like recognizing things that are not necessarily like a micro credential, but like if you are the person that always organizes the happy hours, or you're like, you know, the team motivator, whatever skills that you bring that then can now be verified that aren't necessarily micro credential. But now when I go to apply to a job, I don't have to show all these things that make me a great team player, because it's now they're recognized, hopefully by an employer who's tracking these things. And it's like, oh, you know, I have a friend of mine named Jessica who is getting her MBA, getting married while fighting breast cancer, and she had her full-time job. And she's just like the most incredible person in the world. But if you just looked at her resume, you wouldn't know that all of those things were happening. And if she was working at an employer who gave her like a championship thing, or like a breast cancer survivor while working full time, like something where that incredible skill of resilience is being recognized, that makes it so much better for her as a candidate in the workforce, and for the next employer that gets to see her like, this person's incredible in and outside of the workplace, and like they're only going to bring that passion and tenacity and all of these great skills and empathy, and they can help us build our program where, you know, next time somebody has a big medical emergency or is going through something catastrophic like that, how can we be a better employer? And then that gets more retention rates, and that solves how much money you're spending on hiring. And I'm excited to see a world where that all becomes true. So I think these are all really exciting moments where I think sometimes people can bring a lens that's like, AI is getting in the way of our hiring. You know? Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that this, the movement towards evidence and skills-based achievements sort of gamifies the process a little more for individuals, so that they can collect those achievements along the way, and they can put them in a place, digital wallet, if you want to go there, and that there can be a destination for these achievements to live, so that the tools can generate a better view, a more comprehensive view for that individual first, so they can understand, wow, I collected all these things over the last 4 years with my current employer, and I did all these other things on the outside that I have achievements for, that I've made self-assertions for. And now this tool helps me see a more comprehensive picture of my skills that I can talk about and confidently apply to a role, or confidently stay in the role that I'm in, because I know that I'm a great candidate and I'm the right person for the job that I'm in, and I'm happy in the job that I'm in. I think that's also a part of this, is that it's so much about the transitions and so much about like what's next and what's next. there are a lot of people who are really happy in the roles that they're in and do a great job. And employers want to retain those people, and helping those people see that they have acquired these skills in the role that they're in. They're demonstrating those skills. There's a high likelihood that that person will stay with you if they feel like they're being cared for and appreciated in the ways that they've demonstrated.
Yep, that recognition goes a long way. Like, people want to be seen for their hard work. We've come now to a part of history where there isn't loyalty to a company anymore because the company doesn't have loyalty to them. And so we have a whole generation of Gen Z entering, watching millennials and baby boomers getting fired and laid off and all of these things. And we're going to come, I think, to a new era where we're going to want loyalty in both directions. And I think that recognition piece of like, wow, my employer sees me. Look at all the skills they gave to me and skills I didn't even know I was doing. Like, how exciting. So yeah. Thank you so much for spending time with us and having such a wonderful conversation. It's always amazing to chat with you and hear your insights and all the different pieces of this industry that, you know, you're tapped into. So thanks for spending time with us and writing an article, and we'll see you at Badge Summit.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, and yeah, excited to get in person and chat more about this and all the other things that we didn't touch on. So yeah, thanks for the conversation.
How can people get in touch with you if they want? Like, give us a little pitch on how anybody can connect with you, what kind of offerings, so that if people are interested in hiring you or just chatting with you more, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, I feel like this is that moment at the end of Hot Ones. If you ever watch the shows where they're like, this camera, that camera, that camera. Tell us what you got going on.
Yeah.
I don't have anything that crazy cool going on, except I do have an 8-month-old at home, and she is a doll, and I feel like the luckiest person in the world. So that's going on. And if you want to get in touch, LinkedIn is probably the most logical way to get connected. Education Design Lab is my 9 to 5, and we are doing some pretty incredible work. So check out our website and see what we've been up to. I work with a lot of schools and a lot of technology companies on the sides of things. And I'm deeply interested and still connected to the Web3 world. I know it's kind of a dirty word, and the AI world and the intersection of those things, which is really powerful as well. So if you ever want to have a conversation, please reach out to me to chat. And if you're interested in finding ways to work together, Education Design Lab does some incredible work. And there's some other ways that we can partner too. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and good luck with for everybody out there.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So I'll see you next month. Have a great rest of your Friday. Thanks for hanging out with us.
See ya.
Bye.